Really excited right now about this season. We had our 16th practice yesterday. We play 20 days from today. We have our opener versus Mercer. So I think we still got 20 days left to continue to improve and keep building on what we're trying to do. But outside of that, we're excited for the season and excited for today. So if anyone has any questions, I'd love to, anything you guys want.
Coach, I know you said the conference media day, one of the things you are really kind of measuring on early is, defensive success or executing that. How do you feel like that plan has gone? Like, is your defensive philosophy being instilled pretty good?
Yeah, Stephen, it is, and we feel good about it. We're 16 practices in. We've had a 40-minute scrimmage. We'll have a few more of those where we have a chance to, compete against each other. But it's difficult because of depth. Obviously, you don't have the depth. Anytime you do an inter-squad scrimmage, we're really going to know in 20 days when we can line up and have 16 guys on one side, and we can use that depth. But with that being said, when we are able in those scrimmages to play the up-tempo defense that we want to, pressure the ball the way we want to, play in the full court the way we want to, I think we feel pretty good about where it's going. The guys, most importantly, Stephen, the buy-in. The guys have really bought into this defensive system, and but we got a long way to go to get where we want to be. But yes, I feel like the buy-in's been good, and we're happy with where we're at.
Coach, is that one of the byproducts of when you take over a new program and you get such a young team, but if you can get them on the same page defensively, that can turn into offense and you don't need the great scores yet, that kind of thing. And it's all about recruiting players down the line, but this first year, you got to play great D, right?
Yeah, and I think, Brian, we want to have the great scores and great players from day one. We'd love to have it. But you know what? Whether it's year 1, year 2, 3, 4, and beyond, whenever it is, I think defense is always going to be at the foundation, at least for our program. That's what we want it to be. So, and you said something that's key, and Brian, I do believe this. I do believe strong defense can lead to offense. I don't necessarily think always great offense or great scoring leads to strong defense. It can happen, and there's different things that allow that to happen, but I directly feel that strong defense, creating turnovers, disrupting another team's offense can lead directly to points for your team. So I've always had that philosophy. We had that philosophy at Tennessee, and we'll try and implement that here. But yeah, to go with your point, I think at all times defense has to be at the core of what we're doing.
Hey, Coach, when you have a couple of players coming from some bigger programs, say like Quinn from Tennessee and Jaden from Iowa State, who maybe weren't asked to shoulder a lot of the scoring, does that, when they come on a team like this, who's I think returning fewer than 15 points, does that kind of allow them to take that next step when something they might not be asked to do in the past, they can do so here?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think it's really twofold to that. I think number one, they're excited about that opportunity. We as a coaching staff obviously see something that we feel they can do more than maybe they did production-wise wherever they were before, Iowa State and Tennessee and the two that you spoke about. But that being said, also, this is the first time that they've been asked to shoulder that kind of load. This is the first time they've had that responsibility on them. And I talk to them a lot about that as much as you have a new responsibility and you feel like you like, what you're being asked to do, you've never been asked to do this, at least not for a while. Maybe Quentin back at prep school and back in France, and Jaden maybe back when he was in high school in Atlanta. But his first 2 years at Iowa State, he wasn't asked to be very productive on the offensive side. He had moments that were better than others. Quentin didn't ever have that opportunity at Tennessee really to put it in the books. So even though they're transfers and they have a little bit of experience, they're being asked, like you said, to kind of shoulder a new role, which really makes them inexperienced in that role. So they're going to go through the ebb and flow and the ups and downs of that too. But from an excitement standpoint, I think there's no doubt that's one of the reasons they were excited to be here.
Mike, you're in a business that ultimately is measured by wins and losses, as you know. You spend your time motivating the guys, try to be successful on the court, off the court. Just curious, what motivates you to try and be successful, to have this team turn the corner and have success on the court? How do you motivate yourself?
Well, I would probably just top of my head, three things popped to mind as you were asking that question. And number one is just competitive spirit. I think this is, I can't say in coaching in general, I would imagine most coaches have a very high competitive spirit. And I believe that that's something that's always driven me, and whether it was a player, whether it's in coaching as a young coach, and also whether it's just in life. That's just what it is. That's just part of my DNA. I think number two is really the joy and what you want to get out of seeing our players, our student athletes be successful. I've had a chance to be in it 24 years. This is my 24th season as a coach. I had a chance to be in college and play in high school. So the winning, the competing, the success that you get when you win as a team, whether it just be good seasons, individual games, championship seasons, it's a special, memorable thing. And it's something that we really want to share with our guys here as our student athletes. We want them to experience that. And then the last piece is, we're here at ECU. I want this community. When you talk about motivation, there's nothing I would want more than to see the ECU, Greenville, the community of ECU, the alumni, everybody that's a Pirate or Pirate Nation experience what it is to win and win big and have that feeling. So I think there's a lot of answers to that question, but just competitive spirit, sharing that winning feeling or trying to build that winning feeling for our student athletes, and then as important as any, this university and this community.
Coach, I think we ask about Winston Tabs every time we see you, so might as well keep it going. Any update on his? I know you said he might be cleared for contact. Has that happened yet?
Yeah, you're right on cue with that. He actually had his first contact practice yesterday, and that does not mean that he will be cleared to play in inter-squad scrimmages or cleared to play when we play Mercer, on the 8th. But he has been cleared for the first time in this process, which was a great accomplishment for him. So much credit to our training staff and strength and conditioning staff. I think Nate, our trainer, is as good as there is in the country, and he has worked so diligently with Winston, and Winston's done incredible in his commitment to trying to get back to the court. And we talked about this at AAC Media Day. There's a mental component and a physical component. But to see him back on the court a couple days, it was actually 2 days ago, to see him back on the court in 5-on-5 play, and as excited as he was, as Nate was, the coaching staff was, what was really neat was to see his teammates, how when we put him on and he got on the court the first time, basically practice stopped. And they went over and hugged him and really kind of just patted him on the shoulder and said, just happy to have him back. But he's getting there. He has not been cleared for game participation yet, but he did practice for the first time, and we were excited about it.
Coach, last time we got to talk to you, you were still in strength and conditioning mode, and now 3 weeks to the season, obviously you've got to have a bunch of stuff in place to be playing games. So what do you do in the next 3 weeks to be ready for that tip?
Just continue. We're going to stay in strength and conditioning mode. I think some of our guys have started to get some extra lifting in during the week on their own. I think that's something that with a young team, with the team that is, forget just the experience part, we're young. We know we have a lot of freshmen, so I think they need that. And so they've done that. So we're going to stay in that strength and conditioning mode for the next 3 weeks. The actual volume of it may decrease a little bit in terms of the length of practice or how much we do, because you're starting to add preparation to that now. So now practices you have to implement the time of preparation as you're getting ready for your games in the season. But with that being said, the main thing is we're just going to continue to try and fine-tune some of those details that we have been putting in since the summer. And there's things that we worked on the very beginning of June that we're still working on right now. And we're not going to stop working on them in November, December, January, February. We'll stay on it. But you hope that the execution piece, fine-tuning those things, how they apply to your next opponent, that's where your focus starts to turn to as you get closer to season.
Coming in as coach, a lot of new faces, both coaching staff and roster. Building up a program kind of from the ground up, coming in as a new face. What are some of the harder parts about molding this program, and what do you think are some ways to remedy that in the first year and get some wins?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up, and there's so many things. Obviously, we talked about what we want, what our standard to be. What do we want our identity on offense to be, our identity on defense? What do we want to stand for off the court in terms of who we are as a program? Not as much what we do, but how we do it. But something that I've realized here now, as a first-time head coach, and I've seen it now here probably the last 2 weeks, so I think it's a real poignant question that you ask, is this. Right now we got 16 guys. It's really like 16 freshmen, because even the returning guys that have college experience, whether it be from another school or be the guys that were here at ECU last year, this is a new system for them. Then you have freshmen coming in. It's obviously new for them too. It's new trying to get on the court and trying to learn the system here, but just getting acclimated to college is new. But here's been the most interesting thing that we have noticed as a coaching staff, and again, really the last 2 weeks, because now we're at the point our guys are really ready to see someone else in front of them. Practices are very, very competitive. They're physical. They're ready to go up against someone else. And you always hit this point in the preseason. But what we've seen is this, and this has probably been the most challenging thing. Right now, the guys in practice, everybody is in a survival mode for themselves, trying to figure out how they prove that they're worthy or that they should be playing, or trying to niche out their role on the team. So what happens is when you have that, some of that cohesiveness on the court doesn't get built as quickly as it does when you have 16 guys on one bench and you got guys pulling for each other. Because right now, every day in practice competing, guys are trying to show why they should be on the court instead of the guy they're going up against. Because there's been no minutes, there's been no rotation handed out, there's nothing set in stone yet. So that has honestly been probably the most challenging thing the last 2 weeks, that we got to go from high competitiveness of trying to get an 8 to 10 man rotation to now all of a sudden you got 16 guys all pulling in the same direction when the time does come to face somebody else. And that's something that I wasn't thinking about up until the last 2 weeks. And I've noticed it more in the scrimmages, because what I've seen is the guys are happy, but they're really happy when they're playing well right now, because they feel like they're earning something. And we're going to get to the point where they understand that it's not about me, it's all about we. But that's a process. But that's probably been the most interesting thing that we've seen the last 2 weeks as we get closer to playing games in terms of a brand new program.
How has the team been gelling so far, and how do you think they'll continue through the season?
I think, kind of to that last point, the funny thing is I think we are gelling really well off the court. I think this is a team that gets along off the court. We spend a lot of time together off the court, not just basketball-wise. They're gelling really well when we're in workouts, individual workouts, guys getting extra shooting. They come back at night, they shoot, they spend time together, they live together. We have, whether it's the dorms or where they live off campus. So all that stuff has really been strong, and that's an important piece. I think the part that we got to continue to want to be great is that we connect really strong on the court, in terms of what we were just talking about, guys pulling for each other. The hardest thing in sports to do sometimes is when you really want to be on the court playing, and that's not your role at the time, and you got to be pulling for someone else that you're competing with every day since last April. Because we've been competing since April, then the new guys came in June. So that's where we got to continue to build. But to answer your question, I feel like we're going to really be a strong unit together. I think they'll continue to grow, and the more competition we get against other teams, the stronger we'll be as a unit on the court.
Coach, I was just curious, the local kid, Jackson Ellingsworth from West Carter High School, what have you seen from him so far?
He's been a real, I guess I'd call him a pleasant surprise. You don't know what to expect sometimes when you have a walk-on. I mean, I was a walk-on, so I hold them to a very high standard. Sometimes probably coach them harder than I coach the other guys, to be honest. So when Jackson came in, I think he was I don't want to say he was definitely not happy to be here, but he came in with something in mind that, hey, I'm excited to be at ECU. I'm excited to be playing Division I basketball. And all of a sudden, he started to come and do more and more in his individual workouts and have some success in practice. And I think when the expectations grew a little bit for him from the coaching staff, he took a little bit of a half step backwards, and then now he's back working his way back up. So, he's really been a positive impact on the team. And more than just his energy and what a great kid he is, he's done some really good things in practice.
We've asked about Winston's injury and rehab, but what about Benjamin? He had the injury at the JUCO level. Does he feel like he's back to 100% or getting that explosiveness back?
Hard for me to say, hey, he's 100% or where he's at, because I never can coach him at the junior college. But I'll say this about Benjamin. He hasn't missed any time. He's in practice. He's an every rep guy. He's the kind of guy that you got to tell him and get him out and get a sub in for him. if you asked him, he'd probably say, my balance isn't exactly where I want it to be, or explosiveness, where in his mind it has been. But I think that's a normal process of coming back. But he's, from an injury standpoint, particularly to what you're alluding to, he's been great.
How would you define success this year? What would you like to see accomplished this season?
Us establishing a true identity of who our program is. Defensively, offensively, obviously. I mean, it's not just on the defensive side of the ball. Everyone always wants to talk about the defense for, that's fine. But establishing an identity, again, not as much what we do, but how we do it and how that equates to success. I'm not going to put wins and losses and a number on that or what do we do in conference play, what do we do in non-conference play as what would define success. I think we'll know more as the season goes. We want to be in the postseason just like anybody else. There's 350-something teams in the country right now that all feel like they want to play in the NCAA tournament. They want to play in postseason. There's 350 teams in the country right now that want to win a conference championship, and we are no different. And that's how we approach every single day. But trying to define success, I think that's something that will happen as the year goes, and we'll see. We want it right now. Success would be finding a good 8-man rotation. That would be a first part of success. When we get to November 8th, who can we count on? Can we count on 8 guys? Can we count on 10 guys? And I think it'll build from there.